Today, I'm going to be talking about joyful lead-ins for successful classrooms. But first, allow me to properly introduce myself. I know Dr. Reem gave a wonderful introduction, but I just want to say that my name is Dr. Saud Buhamdi, and I'm not my job. Sometimes it is great to just open up, especially in the classroom, and actually talk about who you are as a person. So I've always been somewhat of a serial hobbyist. And for the longest time, I thought this was like a bad thing, jumping from one interest to the next, not spending enough time to properly become an expert at one thing and just becoming like a, sort of like a, oh, what do you call it? The master of none. Anyway, yes. So interested in photography, interested in traveling, taking pictures while traveling. I always love to do some hiking. I did a little bit of diving. So scuba diving, was a dive master for like a dive center. I also played a weird sport called underwater hockey, which allowed me to practice diving. I also have I teach in Kuwait Technical College, but I also have a side business. I'm sure you've seen those plants, but basically my business with my friends, it's like a passion project, is basically like plant styling and plant consultation. So yeah, basically, I think it's great to show what you're interested in and show the person behind the job and the passion that you have for life in general and your interests. And I think that makes a great and a wonderful introduction, especially towards the start of your classes. So what is a lead-in? Today we're going to be talking about lead-ins. Lead-in is a short activity. So it's basically to warm up the students at the start of the class. And it usually lasts about 5 minutes, but it could be extended if it really helps cement the aims and the objectives you have for the whole lesson. So, sometimes I could say, I'm planning on doing it for 5 minutes, but it ends up taking sometimes it takes up 10, especially if I get a lot of engagement and I get a lot of like comments and discussions from students. And I'm like, yes, this is working. This is amazing. I'll extend it, no problem. So why use lead-ins? Why are they important? And why are we talking about them today? Basically, the first thing is to grab the students' attention, to set the context, to warm up and activate English mode, since we're talking, we're TESOL. It's also to actively engage with the students and to add value outside of the curriculum. I will be talking about them one by one. So the first one, to grab students' attention. Unfortunately today, and I'm pretty sure if you're an English teacher, if you're a teacher of anything really, I'm sure you've dealt with short attention spans of students. Students come from different backgrounds. They'll be doing different things outside of the classroom that are interesting for them. And for them to come to the classroom, most of the time they're like, yeah, we're not interested. We were sitting in a coffee house, enjoying our coffee, or we're playing some sort of sports, or we're hanging out with our friends. Why should we listen to our instructor? What is important about this lesson? So today, and especially with smartphones, today's smartphones and, these instant gratification applications with endless scrolling, such as Instagram, WhatsApp, TikTok, have shortened people's attention span in general, and especially students, and especially young students. So it's a sad reality, but it is now very, very hard to actually grab the attention of students and to actually keep it to the end of the classroom. So you go in and you give them something great, something amazing, something that really sparks interest it will make them forget about their smartphones, and hopefully for them not to use their smartphones until the end of the classroom. Okay, so set the context. Yeah, set the context. So a well-planned lead-in should introduce the material you're trying to cover in your lesson. It should serve as like a teaser or like a taster of some sort of what you're trying to accomplish in your lesson, sorry. This way, they are either intentionally or unintentionally ready for what they are about to learn. So usually whenever I'm planning lead-ins, I plan it to be almost like a part of the lesson. And if it's not part of the lesson, it should be part of the situation that they're in. So maybe maybe tomorrow is their midterm. So my lead-in could be something about exam taking, for example. I'll give more examples later. So I think hopefully this should make more sense later on. So warm up and activate English mode. An interesting lead-in should activate cognitive functions to begin the learning process and to activate English mode, as many students may have not had any English practice since you last saw them. So first one with cognitive functions, if you give students something that is very interesting and something that actually it almost serves as like a wake up for the brain. Okay, so they've listened to something interesting, their brains have woken up. Okay, whatever I'm listening at is actually interesting. So that must mean, the brain almost like wakes up and becomes almost like ready for absorbing information. And with a lot of students, unfortunately, most of the time, their only English practice is what you do with them in the classroom. And for you to activate English modes, you start with something kind of light, something not necessarily within the curriculum. So if you can imagine going in the classroom and immediately starting with grammar. I think it's just hard for the brain to just switch to learning grammar immediately. So giving them that sort of lead in to what they're about to learn can be very, very helpful in actually making them, okay, maybe I don't like grammar, maybe I don't like vocabulary, but I am ready to learn the grammar and I'm ready to learn the vocabulary. Actively engage with students. So the most interesting and surprising lead-ins gather the most engagement from students. Certainly this has been my case. So if I give them something really interesting, I give them a really interesting topic, I make them watch a very interesting video, or I give them like a very interesting little exercise, I get a lot of engagement. And if I do get a lot of engagement at the start of the classroom, these are my most successful classrooms. So the engagement just stays until the end of the classroom, whether I'm teaching with whatever it is that I'm teaching them towards the end. Plus, the students remain more engaged and actively participating to the end of the class. But you just need to make sure it is vital to facilitate students' expression and discussion. So if I give them something interesting, I have to give them like a chance to participate, a chance to discuss, a chance to comment on something. And usually it works. Sometimes even like I get engagement where the student wants to explain something that is really complex, but they don't yet have the English ability to say it. And sometimes they would ask me, I'm so interested in this, I want to participate, but it's just too hard for me to actually say it in English. Can I say it in Arabic? And I'm like, okay, but try to speak it in English. And if there's something you can't say, just say it in Arabic. So the goal here is to engage with as many students as possible, as early as possible. If the students are engaged at the start, And a lot of students are engaged at the start. This is exactly what you want, because they will stay engaged towards the end of the class. And you can, with lead-ins, you can add value outside of the curriculum. So I want you to think about this for a minute. Aren't you much more likely to listen to someone who is adding value to your life? You know, the same concept can be applied in the classroom. If I give you something, if I give you, for example, a tip on life, or if I give you like some advice, or I tell you something super interesting, and you think that I am adding value to your life, I will probably listen to what you have to say, because, hey, Dr. Saud just told me something amazing, or he told me a tip I never knew about something. Yeah, I want to listen to him. I want to listen to him because he's adding value to my life. And it's not just once, it's, throughout the whole course, basically. So the same concept can be applied in the classroom. You give them a lead-in, it adds value to their lives, not necessarily in the curriculum, but outside of the curriculum, and they are much, much more likely to listen to what you have to say throughout the lesson. And I get students sometimes who come at the end of the class and they tell me, thank you for discussing this. I never knew about this. Yeah. So you get the sense that, so the students will get the sense that you're not just there to give the class and leave. No, you're actually adding value, and you're giving them a lesson in English, which adds to their life, and it adds to their personal life, and it adds to their professional life. So lesson topics and lead-in ideas. I know I'm talking theory here, but I would love to give you a few examples of what I use in the classroom. So these are a few examples of lead-ins used in my English classes. They may be used in non-English classrooms if they are connected to the lesson. So obviously, whatever I have to say here can be applied to non-English classes, but you have to make it, somehow connected. The great thing about teaching English is that you're basically teaching them a language, and you can cover basically any topic you want. Most of the time you're covering topics within the curriculum, but you can just, it spans basically anything you want. So I'll give you a few examples. So let's say I have a lesson in energy. Okay. I would tell them about the wind and solar energy farm in Al Shigaya in Kuwait. A lot of students don't know that we have a wind and solar energy farm. They just think, we get all our energy from oil, from petrol. I show it to them on the map. Maybe I read a little article on the wind and solar energy farm. They find it interesting because this is something that is in their country, but most of the time they don't know about. For careers, this is a big one. I love this one, and I get the most engagement out of this one with careers. And I use this in both my English and my career development classes. It's ikigai. So it's like a Japanese concept of finding a purpose in your life. So it's basically, what you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs. And if you can combine something that hits all four spots, you would find your ikigai. And I tell them, listen, this is not a concept that I tell you. I actually apply this to my own life. So the way I found the purpose in my life is doing this. So I'm an English instructor, and I've used ikigai. Do I love it? Yes. Am I good at it? Yes, I like to think so. Can someone pay me for it? Yes, I have a job, alhamdulillah. And does the world need it? Yes, of course, the world needs English instructors. Same thing with my business. And this is something that, if I'm talking about careers, most of the time, most students, and this is something that I dealt with. I'm a student, but I don't really have a clue on what to do in my life. So hopefully this is a way to get them to know, about what they want to do in life, or actually hopefully figure out what they want to do in life. If I'm talking about the environment, talk about the Milankovitch ice age cycles. So we go through different ice age cycles, and where are we right now within the ice age cycles, and how human activity and how climate change has actually affected this cycle. Also, I show them a video. There's a famous YouTube video on how wolves change rivers. So, getting them open to the idea. So even if you don't necessarily enjoy the environment, talking about those things actually makes it, okay, this is something interesting. How do wolves change rivers? So it makes you open up to the idea of learning about the environment. With robots and AI, I give them like a little exercise where we discuss different jobs, and they basically have to guess if this is like a future proof or this is going to be a redundant job in the very near future. And we discuss why they chose specific jobs and why we think this is future proof or redundant jobs. And sometimes I would just, we don't have the answers, so I would just, Google this stuff with them. With education, I would discuss why Finland's education system is the best in the world. Give them examples on why it's the best in the world, what they use, how it's different to Kuwait, maybe if it's possible to apply in Kuwait, and if it is, when, can we apply it next year, or is it something that we can apply 10 years from now, or maybe 50 years from now, who knows? With business, there's a lot of examples, but a lot of the times I would give them stories of success, sometimes local, sometimes international. Just two examples here is a story of Lamborghini and also the fish fillet in McDonald's, how it became a successful sandwich. With design, this is a little bit technical, but I give them like a color science. Since I'm into photography, I know about this stuff. I think it's interesting. Hopefully the students find it interesting, but sometimes I feel like this is a little bit too technical for them. But sometimes we would discuss, like why the Mona Lisa? Like, why is the Mona Lisa the most famous painting in the world? What makes it special? Let's try to break down the design. Let's try to break down the composition. Let's try to break down why it's so expensive. Why do people love it? What did it bring to the design world, the art world, whatever it is? For travel, I give a lot of the times I would give them travel stories. So I would share travel stories, and I would ask them to share travel stories. Always super interesting, always funny. We get the funniest stories. Also, how to create a travel itinerary. Since most of them are young, most of them want to travel, and most of them want to adventure and want to do all these amazing things, but they don't really have the skills to actually put that. So I would teach them on how I create my travel itinerary. So what do I search? What applications do I use? Which websites do I use? How I do my research when it comes to traveling, and how I go to the places that I go to. Architecture, I would tell them about the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence. So explain to them. I know this is like kind of related to maths, but hey, it's an English class. Sometimes you can go there. With exploration, sometimes we talk about space. I love learning about space. So I tell them, how Mars, Europa, Ganymede, and Enceladus may have extraterrestrial life. How researchers are trying to figure out basically where to look for extraterrestrial life, and it may not be the aliens that you think they are. They might be like tiny bacteria or microbes. And for health, we talk a lot about health. So sometimes we would be starting Ramadan soon, and I would tell them about fasting, how it's good for your health. Also link it to like scientific, let's say, studies about like intermittent fasting, and that's how very, very similar to fasting in Ramadan, for example. Also, maybe talk about sleeping. Share a video or share an article about the importance of sleep, and especially during exams, because during exams, students just most of the time, well, students just they don't sleep. They study until they study until they go to the university without getting much sleep. And I just tell them about the importance of sleep, and I do get a lot of also good feedback regarding that. Okay, so how do you incorporate this? How do you incorporate lead-ins to your lesson plan? This might sound a little bit intimidating. How do I really how do I plan this, and how do I incorporate this into the classroom? Well, my advice, this is certainly what I do, is to leave the lead-in prep until after you finish preparing for your lesson. So usually I prepare for my lesson. I don't know, it takes me what, an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is. And then after I finish from my lesson prep, I then prepare for my lead-in. So, okay, what am I covering today? This will kind of dictate what it is that I'm trying to cover in my lead-ins. Sometimes I know immediately what I'm trying to what the lead-in is going to be. Sometimes there's a little bit more research. Sometimes it could be a video that I watched this week, or maybe an interesting article that I read, or something that has happened to me, like a personal story that I say, okay, this is kind of related to what we're trying to cover, and I think this is going to be great for the students and hopefully get great engagement. So the important thing is, for the lead-in activity, it should be interesting for your students. You know your students, and you probably know what they are interested in. So sometimes I would think about a lead-in, and I think, hey, is this going to be interesting for the students? Sometimes it's interesting for me, but it might not be interesting for my students. So so try as much as possible to think about what they would find interesting. What's the age group, what's their interest level, what do they usually talk about? Then that's going to give you a clue on if it's going to be interesting enough for your students. The second thing is to be, it kind of needs to be tied with your lesson plan and with your objectives. There's no point in giving a lead-in, taking 5 or 10 minutes of the classroom, and it's completely not related to the classroom. Usually it should be either related to the class, or it should be related to the context of what is happening around them. So as I said, maybe it's final exams, maybe it's presentations week, maybe it's like a assignment week. It depends. It should also be beneficial, and it should add value to the student's life. I don't want to waste 5-10 minutes of the classroom on something that is not going to be beneficial. And hopefully it's going to be beneficial to at least some people who are going to listen to what you have to say. And it should not exceed 10 minutes. I try not to exceed 10 minutes. It has happened before, sometimes, that it exceeds 10 minutes, especially when I get a lot of good engagement, and I get a lot of discussions, a lot of people basically wanting to participate in whatever it is that I covered. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you have any ideas for lead-ins, what you use for the classroom, I would love to discuss them. If you want to also brainstorm ideas for your classes, brainstorm lead-ins for your classes, I'd be more than happy to share them with you and actually discuss these with you. You can also, this is after we discuss, after the questions and after the comments and ideas, you could certainly email me. Here's my email at the bottom. If you want to collaborate, I'll be happy to. So yeah, questions, comments, ideas for lead-ins, that would be wonderful.
Right, thank you so much, Dr. Saud. I think we have so many comments about how beneficial and how interesting this whole session has been for everyone. So they're talking about the wonderful concepts used. And for those who would like a copy of Dr. Saud's PowerPoint, I think the best way to connect with him is via email, and you can see that on the shared screen. So please definitely go ahead, save his email, and feel free to contact him. So it says here, initially perceiving students as valuable co-learners is key, definitely. So the teacher cares for them and understands their needs better. All right, definitely. So it says here, are these 5 to 10 minute lead-ins part of a 50-minute class?
Sometimes it's part of a 50-minute class. Sometimes it's part of a, 75-minute class. Usually if it's a 50-minute class, I try to make it only 5 minutes. If I do have the 75-minute class, then I can take 10 minutes, no problem. Usually sometimes, a lot of the times, students come in late while they set up whatever it is that they set up. So usually I use that time basically to grab their attention. It's a lead-in, yeah.
Definitely. We had a question early on from Ms. Zainab saying, is it good for special needs students? So can you talk to us about your experience? Do you ever encounter special needs students within your classes, and do these lead-ins help?
I do encounter special needs students. I'm not necessarily sure they directly benefit them, but what I usually do is the special needs students, I give them a little bit extra of my personal time. So I would usually go over and I would talk to them. I would ask them about just generally ask them about their life, just show interest, and just make sure that, I'm not giving them special treatment, but I'm giving them special care and making sure that, listen, if there's something you don't understand, or if there's something that is, whatever it is, I'm here, it's fine. This is a learning environment. Feel free to ask whatever it is that you want to ask. If you're not comfortable doing it in the classroom, you could always come after the classroom.
Wonderful. I think we have a last question right here. So it says, I was wondering about the way you get the students back into the main session itself after the lead-in. Any helpful ideas?
Yeah, so most of the time I give out my lead-in. I take attendance, which usually takes like about 2-3 minutes. And then I would say, this is what we're going to cover during the class. And I would just jump straight in. And if the lead-in is tied to the class, it just becomes an easy transition. Because you've pretty much covered the main idea of what the lesson is going to be. It's just great because this is something that, and especially if you've prepared the lead-in, then you're probably going to be passionate about it. It's different from the curriculum because the curriculum is not something that you've prepared yourself. And, passion is great. And audience copies, the audience copies the energy and the passion that the presenter presents.
Definitely.
So yeah, hopefully that helps.
All right, I think we have one more question. So in a 60-minute lesson, how long would you suggest the lead-in should be max?
5, maximum 10 minutes again. Yeah.
Okay.
I know this does take up time of the classroom, but I think the benefits far outweigh the negatives, because again, you're giving them something that is interesting. You're opening up their cognitive functions. You're giving them something that is going to be beneficial for them. And I think it just makes an interesting lesson. It makes an interesting lecture. When you get students who are like, their eyes have lit up, they're engaging with you, they're discussing with you. You keep that to the end of the classroom. And I'm grateful that I don't have a lot of problems when it comes to phone usage.
Mhm.
And I think hopefully this is part of the reason, is these interesting lead-ins, which makes them hopefully forget about their phones.
All right, wonderful. And I think we have a little suggestion here saying that we can write lead-ins or the topic of the lead-ins on the board for those students who are more visual learners.
Certainly, yeah. Here's the great thing about lead-ins. It can be whatever it is that you want to be. It can be an article, it can be a video, it can be something you draw on the board, it could be a discussion, it could be an activity, it could even be a physical activity. And Dr. Reem, do you remember Hamza Taqi's
Yeah,
class?
I do.
Like his lectures and his classes are amazing because it just starts different, and it starts in a way that you unexpectedly, so you just listen to what he has to say until the end, because yeah, so the opportunities and the ideas are honestly endless, and it can be whatever it is that you want it to be. Stories, people love stories, right? Discussions, again, articles. Sometimes I would get them to share something, so sometimes I would say, today I'm not going to talk, you are going to be doing all the talking. And then they would be looking at me like, what is he talking about? And then I would ask them, I want to hear stories from you, maybe about college experience, maybe about travel experience, whatever it is.
All
Hopefully
right.
that helps.
It says, yep, brain teasers are great too, jokes as well. And we can definitely use topic related vocabulary mentioned in the lead-in just to kind of start the class rolling. Definitely. All right. So I think this brings us to the very end of our session for today. In the chat box, you'll find a link. Please use the link to fill out your details for the certificate of today's session. Dr. Saud, always thank you very much for such an informative session. I think everyone was not only intrigued, they enjoyed it, and they benefited from all the numerous examples that you gave to our participants today. So thank